Hello, good afternoon. This is Emily Brackett, President of Visible Logic. Thanks for joining me for this webinar where we will look at content marketing for tech firms or other specialized and niche products, services, and organizations. I'll be talking about why content marketing can be such an effective marketing strategy and the specific challenges and opportunities that you'll have when you're trying to promote a highly specialized market or trying to sell a very technical product or service. So again, thanks for joining me. My name is Emily Brackett, and I'm president of Visible Logic. Visible Logic is a branding, design, and content-based marketing firm. We work with many organizations who honestly have trouble easily explaining the benefits of their product or service. We work with a lot of software companies, some specialized consulting firms, and some trade organizations that represent very niche markets. We love working with smart people. That's why we work with so many high-tech companies. And we love helping them use design and messaging to distill complicated information into easy-to-understand content. So I hope we can share some of our knowledge with you today, and you'll be able to use that to promote your own product or service. So I'm going to start by just giving a little overview of sort of what content marketing is and why it's so effective. I'm guessing that most people on this call have a basic understanding, but it is something, it's such a buzzword right now. I just want to make sure we all have the same sort of definition in mind of what we're doing here. I won't spend too long on this introduction. So there's what I think of as 5 main reasons why content marketing is so effective. And the first one is it gets to show your expertise. And this is particularly valuable if you are in a niche field. Okay, if you have a very specialized knowledge, content marketing is an outlet for you to show your what your expertise is. This idea of being a thought leader is something that's been done for a long, long time. You know, it used to be, and some of these still pertain today, speaking at conferences, writing an article for a trade magazine, maybe having, in the old days, a printed newsletter, getting interviewed as an expert in either a general newspaper or a trade-specific journal. Those are all ways that people would sort of position themselves as industry leaders and thought leaders. And what's happened with the internet is just really expanded all those opportunities to share your information. Okay, now you can do blogs, you can do email marketing, you can do white papers, you can do video, infographic, you can just write articles on your own website or on other people. You can guest blog on other websites or trade journal sites. You can podcast, and then all of social media falls under that as well as opportunities. So there's just so many more ways you can show your expertise. But the real reason that content marketing has gotten to be such an important element of a marketing strategy is because it can increase web traffic. And so what's behind that? Of course, it's Google. And it's all about search engine optimization. So let's really quickly, this isn't an SEO workshop, but why content marketing helps with SEO. So obviously the first thing is Google wants to serve up useful information to searchers. People may ask about certain things, and those keywords that you write about just as part of your generating content will come up and match up with search inquiries. So it works out really well. Secondly, Google doesn't want to promote robots or link farms and that kind of thing. And when you're talking about marketing a very specialized or high-tech firm, that's definitely not a strategy that would even be beneficial to you. You'd be talking about really content that somebody has to take the time to create, and it's very thoughtfully done usually. So this is just the kind of content that Google wants to promote. And finally, every algorithm that Google releases they're really trying to increase how they can measure engagement. Okay, so they look at when somebody searches on a term and which of those offering, when they give you that search result, which ones do people choose to click on? And then when the next similar search comes up, those ones that got clicked on previously move higher. They also look at time on site. When somebody clicks through, how long do they stay on that page or on the site? and then how many links to your own website have been created by, especially by other reputable websites. So these are all things that content marketing can help drive. Now, I want to be realistic here. We're not necessarily talking about huge traffic growth if you have a very niche market that you're working to, but it still can be attracting the right traffic. Your actual prospects are still influenced by Google. Probably the number one reason that people use content marketing is to build brand awareness. It's a way to get your brand identity connected with you as a trustworthy expert. And you create it on your own terms instead of relying on, let's say, a presentation at a conference where you have to submit an RFP and it has to fit their goals for the conference. It's up to you. You can talk about whatever you want, use whatever voice you want, whatever medium you want, and it's totally up to you. And it can always be branded to be pointing back to your brand. So it's a great way to increase your visibility. And the fourth reason why content marketing is so effective is it can support other marketing efforts. So let's say, for example, you're going to focus on blogging. You write a blog, you send that out into social media. That sends people, they click on the link, they come back to your website. Hopefully they join maybe an email newsletter list. They might download a white paper. They might, it may put your name in front of somebody who would then interview you as an expert. So whether you're doing a traditional PR campaign, you're trying to do some, promote your intellectual property or grow your email marketing campaigns, content marketing can be the foundation for all of those. And the last thing is building the sales funnel. Honestly, some people, some challenges you might be feeling if you're trying to sell the idea of doing content marketing. If you're trying to sell that to somebody else in your organization, you may hear like, well, content marketing doesn't make sales. And there is some truth to that, right? It's better to just address that head on, which is no, a blog post is not going to close a sale. But to think that content marketing cannot help in the sales funnel is definitely an oversight. So is this a typical sales cycle for your business? Someone comes to your website and they buy something. Probably not, right? It's not that straightforward. Most niche products have longer sales cycles with multiple people doing research on your firm or your offering, and maybe even it may have a high touch sales approach depending on what your product is. So this is more typical of a sales cycle. And like these 4 steps you see, the 3 blue steps would be, it doesn't just go visit site, buy. We add in, maybe they sign up for an e-newsletter. Then that prompts them to request an estimate or have you become part of an RFP process, and then they buy. So there's 2 main places here where content marketing can help you. Number 1 is increasing web traffic. So when you look at the whole sales funnel, the pipeline there, the more web traffic you have, the greater chance of them to continue down these steps leading to becoming a buying client. And then the second point is what the idea of micro conversions. A lot of people are not going to go from just like the first time they heard of you to buying from you. They want additional touch points with you that builds their trust. And content marketing is a great way to build trust. But that doesn't mean that everything that you hear about content marketing in the general media is going to apply to you in your very specialized market. And I would like at this time to start a poll here that if you could answer for me whether your organization is tech-based, specialized, or both. And so what that means is some people have a technology, and some people, it's not particularly high technology, but it's very specialized, very niche market. And now, of course, what we're really finding is that both of those are factors for a lot of businesses, which means it's a specialized technical solution for a specialized market. And I think there's just going to be more and more and more of that people are trying to connect with the right audience there. So great. So interestingly, we only have 20% of the group here that would say they're only tech. 40% saying, that's even going down now, 50% are saying both. 33% specialized. Tech continues to lose ground here. We got a few more votes coming in. So that's interesting. So yeah, so as this is just what we're finding in the marketplace as people, prospects talk to us about hiring us. They're like, we have a very specialized technology for a very specialized group. So great. I will keep that in mind. People are still pulling a few things here. Okay. Great. I'm going to close that down. Thank you. That's useful. It might be useful for you also when you're hearing about different things that your content marketing strategies you might be considering. So we find the number one challenge for our customers is making it understandable. Okay. Let me tell you, no one wants to feel dumb. It's an awful feeling. If that's their first impression of you and your company and what you offer, rather than seeing you as a solution that's going to improve their life, they have an immediate negative impression of you, and that's not a good one. So, and I'm going to talk specifically about 3 reasons why it should be made understandable, because again, often when we first start working with a client, they'll say, well, I know it's confusing to you. You don't know our industry, but the people who need to buy this would understand all this jargon and this highly technical, poorly designed engineering drawing. And so we don't care that other people don't get it. But you may be really closing off some doors for yourself. So one thing is there may be somebody who's either a junior person or even a non-technical person who is doing research before maybe putting out an RFP or just getting some preliminary information about what vendors could be possible to fill this need in our organization. And if they come and see your blog and go to your website and they don't understand what you're talking about, you may be left off an RFP before, so early in the process. You don't want to shut down people who may be less experienced than the actual buyer. The second, more touchy one is that not only does no one want to feel dumb, but some of the actual buyers may not fully understand what you do. And they don't want to let on that they don't know what you do or fully understand, right? They have to maintain their presence as the leader and all-knowing. And anything you can do to educate them in a really helpful way is going to build your trust. So if you can explain it, you're much more likely to be trusted. And then you're going to be the more valuable, the source, the trusted source. It's going to grease the wheels there for a sale. Trust is the number one thing for moving the sales process forward. So the 2 things, of course, that we think of are copy, the text, and then design. So I'm just going to give you an example of some copy. I was recently doing some research about some specific web hosting requirements that we had. And I was looking at a couple different web hosts, and on the left was one company's text, and it said, sign up and start coding with access via SSH and SFTP, 10 additional FTP logins, use of PHP Ruby with thousands of gems, Python, Perl with thousands of modules, C, C++, and more installed. You are ready to go. Plus Git, SVN, and CVS revision controls are pre-installed, and all dedicated web hosting packages include an SSL-enabled hosting environment. By contrast, the other company's website said, we're in the business of hosting great ideas. Since we began in 1998, we've been on a mission to help web developers, designers, digital entrepreneurs, and innovators bring their ideas to life online. In 16 years, we've seen a lot of technology trends come and go, but one thing has never changed: our commitment to our customers' success. It's what drives us to offer the best web hosting service and support available anytime, anywhere. So on the left, you definitely see them hitting on keywords. There may be some specific technology pieces that I'm looking for. But what I'm afraid of if I were to choose the host on the left is that, like, if I needed customer service, I would feel like this person doesn't speak the same language as me. I don't understand what they're talking about. Maybe they're even talking down to me, and I'm just not going to feel comfortable with it. Now, the copy on the right may be too soft for some of you, and you would certainly want to support it with those keywords and key features, but you do have to understand that human side that comes through on the right is really important. So beyond the words, the next thing to think about is design. Is it appealing? This is an example of a client's graphic they gave to us, and they said, well, we have these 4 pillars that support our mission as an organization. Not only, so this is really not graphically engaging, it's pretty ugly. The text is very unreadable, being all caps and vertically stacked. The other thing was, as we really pressed them to talk about what did these 4 pillars mean, it actually was that these were not 4 sort of siloed pillars. They were very overlapping. So this is what we created for them, which was something that more clearly showed the overlapping. It was more colorful. It had more explanatory text. It introduced photography. So all of this is, you can imagine somebody taking the new one and using it in content marketing, and maybe a partner saying, you know what, I need to give a presentation. Can I include that graphic here? And I'll mention it's from your organization, that kind of thing. When you have things that are graphically appealing, people will share it. People will use it to support their own messaging. It's just a high quality piece of graphics that's really appealing for people to use and share. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on now to a really important struggle that a lot of firms have, especially the tech ones, which, let's see, most of you said you're either tech or both. So the most common thing, like we work with a lot of software companies, and they'll say, well, our platform, we need to sell to the IT person, but we also need to sell to the business person. Like the IT person needs to know it's going to work for them, and the CFO needs to know that they're going to get some good ROI. So that's sort of a very common thing, like the CTO versus CFO, the geek versus the money person. And how can you address both of their issues? The IT person in general might be more worried about the actual features, the specs, how it's going to integrate with what they do. How is it going to help make their job easier without putting them out of a job? On the business side, they're much more want to know, what is the benefit to me? What are the hard costs, and what is the ROI on that? So the messaging is very different. And there's a lot of ways that we see these audiences split, like IT versus business, developer versus user, the person who researches a product versus somebody buying the product, the person who buys it versus the person who, when you bring it back to your organization, implements it, different verticals, if you have niche vertical audiences, somebody looking for information early in the sales cycle versus the end of the sales cycle. So it can be, some people get overwhelmed by, well, I don't know, who is my audience? Who should I be talking to? That's a really important thing that marketers tend to think of, like, who is my typical persona? And I would argue that there's much more benefit to trying to actually address all of these different audiences at different times. So for example, you might want to mix it up. This is a client of ours who we do a lot of their blog writing for them. And so we have some blogs that show how the actual software looks on somebody's screen. We have some show that show a diagram of the server structure. It's all been designed and branded so that it matches their corporate look and feel. We have different faces appear on their blog with, that represent the CTO talks, the CEO talks. So they'll always have different angles. They'll connect with different readers differently by their voice and the type of benefits and features they talk about. This is another example of two videos. They're both promoting the same product, but you can immediately see, you think of the engineer type liking the video on the left. They're like, okay, this is the person who reads the operating manual start to finish, and they want to get in there, see how it's going to look, to give me a complete walkthrough here. I want to understand this. Versus the person on the right who's like, now I want to see what are the benefits of me as a salesperson out in the field using this. So very different look and feel, both promoting the same product and would be targeted toward different audiences. And finally, another one here. On the left, we have a case study, and on the right, we have an infographic. So a couple points here I wanted to make. These are all from the same client, and the reason I do that is to show like all the different media you could be considering as part of your content marketing strategy. So on the left, we have a case study. Case studies are, really targeted towards people who are probably entering a serious review process of, are you the right vendor for them? And they're not going to have much of appeal outside of that. And that's okay, but they give a lot of targeted information. On the other hand, we created for this company an infographic. So this company helped to bring bring enterprise software to the mobile phones and tablets of salespeople. So this infographic was really all about the benefits of having mobile access when you're out on sales calls, and how if you don't have Wi-Fi, if you don't have your software is not compatible with your smartphone, how these limitations cause problems with closing sales. And we did not really mention their product at all in the infographic, but we knew the niche market of people, the specific number of people who would be buyers for their product is very, very limited, but the number of people who could be users of their product is huge. So we did want to create some content that was far out for the end user, the largest audience group, and that these people might be, these are the type of people who might push back and say, hey, why aren't we considering this solution? This is a company that could help us with this problem. So looking at the niche and looking at the broad, both of them have benefits for you. Don't rule out one or the other. And an image I like to use for this is think about a big clear glass jar or vase or bowl, and it's filled with clear water, and you're dropping little drops of dye in there. And every piece of content marketing you're doing should be building your visibility. And if you take the time to answer specific questions and objections of different audience groups, you're able to cover that dye, cover different areas of what people might be talking about that are all associated to you and your product or service. And it can also help you share the load for creating content. But it's all always done by writing with a unified voice and creating it with a unified brand identity. It's really important. It's always the same color dye, and it's covering that bowl of clear water, and slowly but surely you're going to penetrate all the different areas of your marketplace with your message and your brand identity. And that's what builds trust. People connect your brand identity with your thought leaders. So you've created a bunch of great content, and you really need to work on promoting it. That's important. So, you might start with LinkedIn. As a general rule, LinkedIn is probably a better fit than, say, Facebook for very specialized products that we've been talking about, also for more B2B type of work. But you need to be promoting any content that you build outside of your website. And a really important thing to do is to consider partners. Because if you have a very specialized product or service that you're trying to market, that it can seem very limiting to find the right people. So a great thing to consider is finding somebody who's not a competitor but has the same target audience. And from there, you can agree to share each other's content. You could guest blog for one another. You can promote links in each other's newsletters. You could get together and do a webinar, for example, and each promote it to your own email list, but you'll get a lot of cross-pollination there and the same target audience. The other thing you can always think about is that people are always looking for great content. So you may want to, if somebody buys your product and service and then puts it out as part of something larger, you may want to actually look far down the line to some sort of end user there and help your middle buyer create content that's relevant to them. So you could provide articles for their blog or newsletter. You could create graphics and have it make it really easy for them to share because you've done the work for them. So sometimes, rather than thinking of all the content as being something you create for yourself on your own website, think about what other partners you could spend the same time and effort, but have them get it out to a wider audience. So we've spent a little bit of time here talking about how to cast your net wider, because that's usually what people are worried about. I don't have enough people I can attract to my content because it's so specialized. And once you cast it out a bit more, what you want to do then is segment it. So yes, you need to promote it, but when you promote it on different channels, promote it differently. So for example, going back to the client who we did case studies versus the infographic. If we're going to talk about this infographic, it was all about helping salespeople get mobile access to CRMs and stuff like that. And that's a really, that has a really broad appeal, right? So you could go and find some bloggers and LinkedIn groups, maybe even like some more close to traditional news sources like the online blog for entrepreneurinc.com, that kind of thing. They would be interested in something that has a lot of broad appeal. Like salespeople are always looking for things about productivity and closing more sales. So you might promote it that way. This is something that's going to, these are stats that are of interest to a large group of salespeople. Now, on the other hand, if you went and said to them, oh, here's this case study about some company that used our product, there's no way they would be interested in that content. So you need to avoid sort of blanket promotion of your content in a way that without, you're going to do the same promotion equally on every piece of content. You need to get away from that thought. I think we've all seen this if you're on LinkedIn and there's groups that you participate in. There's some people who every blog post they write, they post it to the group. And it's like, nobody cares. I'm sick of hearing about you. But if you cherry picked your favorite ones, the ones that are going to generate interest, generate inquiries, some comments, and really take the time to do that, you've probably all seen that where, a couple questions really get some interest. So rather than blasting out everything you do to all the same channels, pick and choose how you promote it. And again, you may position the message differently. You might position this, the infographic to salespeople different than how I would position it to IT people. I might tell the IT people, you know what? This is what you could come back to the sales manager with and say, this is how I can support your sales team, and pushing the message from tech over to sales rather than the other way around. So, and a couple specific instances that you want to do this is with, if you are building an email marketing list, it's a really good idea to segment them by either job title, or if there's industry verticals, or maybe some where they are in the sales cycle. Because if you don't do that, if you send a lot of really like, oh, this is a new feature we released to somebody who's an end user, they're just going to zone it out. They're going to start thinking of your email as spam, really building some negative connections with you and your company. Where if you send a little less frequently, but much more targeted to what they're interested in, it's going to be more effective. It can also potentially lower your cost, because if you have a large email list, that where cost is becoming part of it. Same thing as I mentioned the example already with LinkedIn groups. Really take the time to position the right pieces of content to the right groups and only do it selectively. The same thing can be with sending out white papers to people. And you can do this. This also applies to people in the sales process. If you're providing content that your sales team is using, allow them to cherry pick which leads get which type of content presented to them, instead of just blasting all of them with a fire hose of content. So that leads us to one last question, which is, can content marketing drive sales? And so I explained earlier, it can really increase the sales funnel, and it can do a couple things. And I just want to bring a couple points out, which is, should you have free content or gated content? And if you're not familiar with those terms, so free is anybody can go access something. Most blogs are free. A more common thing is somebody might say, well, to get this white paper from us, you need to give us your contact information. It could be as simple as an email address. It could be a lot of information like your company name, your phone number, your address, whatever. And blocking it means that only people who are willing to give that information get that content. So the biggest thing to think about here is that people don't like to give their email addresses anymore. They're sick of all the spam, and you need to find content valuable enough that someone's going to be willing to give their email address. Now, the good news is that there's certainly a precedent in the B2B marketplace to give your contact information to download something of value with some intellectual property behind it, such as a white paper. There's, in the consumer side of things, there's a lot more pressure to just give it away, and it will come back to you as some sort of like, it'll get shared virally and that kind of thing. If you're in a niche and specialized market, it's probably unlikely anything's going to go really viral. So that's probably not worth it for you. It's probably much more valuable to you to get a real lead's contact information. But I see companies do this all the time. Like, they have a white paper, but that they're trying to get you to download, but it's really not that enticing. You have to figure out what is your best piece of content that people are willing to give that information to get, and put some effort into that. And the second thing is while we spent a lot of time up front, and what you'll hear a lot is about how content marketing can help search engine optimization, it can also clearly help the sales process. So when you're creating content, don't think of all of it as something that you just put up, let's say, on your blog, and it sits there, and people who have gotten on your email list don't ever get that information. You want to think about what can you feed to both groups, or even creating specific content for people who are a little bit further down the pipeline. So like in a lot of these, in a lot of B2B businesses, there's a lot of research involved. It's a long sales cycle. So what are some of the questions you get early in the sales process? What are some that you can address much further down the sales process? Those are great things that, whether, again, it's in a generic e-newsletter, or with individual emails from individual sales reps, what kind of content can you use to support that? Do I have any questions so far? I'm just going to take a break, and then I'm going to summarize here. So if you have any questions, I have see a couple that are coming in. Let's see. Okay, actually, I think I just answered one recently. I just sort of touched on this about how you can nurture a lead through content marketing. So definitely the most important thing is to segment them either by where they are in the sales cycle or what type, maybe you have more than one product they might be interested in, that kind of thing. And you need to spend some time generating content that's going to push somebody closer to a sale, not just pulling people in at the front end. So that's a great question. Okay, so I'm going to go back and we have 4 main challenges I see that people with very specialized product and services run into, and then the quick summary of how you can improve those. So low traffic. So first of all, set realistic goals. Okay, like don't try to pull some industry trends from like a consumer brand or something and think that you're gonna get 100-fold increase in your web traffic. And if you do, you're probably gonna get like a lot of bounces and not really targeted traffic. So really think about whether the traffic is from real prospects. And then secondly, the way to improve your traffic though is to try to target all those different audience types that we talked about earlier. Don't just think about maybe the end buyer, but all the different people who will touch your product or service in one way or the other, because that will boost overall awareness and traffic. Second challenge is that you find it hard to explain your product or service. So I've sort of touched upon this already. Think about different media. Maybe written word is very difficult, but it is keyword rich, so that's important. Maybe a chart or a graph would show that better. Maybe a video, maybe an analogy rather than an actual straight description. Definitely consider professional writers and designers who can cull that information together for you and make it succinct, make it understandable because of the fact that they're not in your industry. Challenge number 3, keeping up with content demand. This is a huge one. People will talk about you have to feed the beast. You do when you need to keep creating content. And so a couple things there. Think about systematizing the process, like creating an editorial calendar, delegating the certain work. Like what does the CTO do? What does the marketing coordinator do? What does the CEO need to do to get all of these content pieces completed? Again, partners and specialists can help you. Partners could be other, like people then with the shared audience who could maybe help give you some ideas or their own content to share that you could adjust. And specialists such as writers and designers who can help you stay on target and keep creating those pieces of content. Typical thing is that we'll work with a client, and before we got involved, they're like, oh yeah, we tried to write the blog, but we never got it done. It's like, well, if you hire us, you're going to get a blog, every 2 weeks, just as we've said, because we're going to make sure it gets done. It's our top priority rather than your, 59th priority. And the last challenge is helping sales. So the two things are you do need to introduce some gated content. If you just have a lot of people swarming around your website and you don't have a way of capturing their lead, it's going to be a lot harder for you to make that next step to a sale. So you want to have a way to capture their information. You want to have calls to action on your website to get them to download it. You can also consider like HubSpots and Capterra and other ways of tracking IP addresses if that's helpful to you. But you need to somehow identify who these people are so that you can move the sales process forward. And then secondly, make sure that your content marketing strategy is not only on that first level of filling the funnel of the very broadest people, but filling it with content with people further down the sales funnel. So those are the 4 main challenges I see in how you can deal with them in niche and specialized markets. So we do have time for some questions, and I have a couple right here. okay, somebody asked for what is an example of content to push people through. So let's say when somebody's getting close to, they're thinking, I'm going to go with this product or service, and then they start thinking, oh my gosh, what does this mean on the implementation side? So it could be, you know what, this is the 10-minute setup guide so that you know what's going to happen when you onboard this new product or service. Testimonials from people who did that. So not only the testimonial up front that, yes, this is a brand we trust and blah, 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 but those testimonials that say, you know what, we implemented this and it was so easy to do. We did it in 30 minutes or something they're getting further down the line in the sales cycle. Their questions about buying from you are getting real specific, and figuring out what those are and how you can make them feel more comfortable about that. So definitely testimonials, some guides so that they know that it's not like I'm going to make this sale and I'm off in the blue and with no support. Maybe even introducing them to customer service people. That's really not a content marketing strategy, but those are really useful things so people understand that the transition is going to be smooth. Okay, we have a couple more questions here. Let's see, frequency. How frequently do you suggest we be blogging? So this is a great question, one that we get all the time. And there is no magic number, although there is pretty clear proof that the more content you produce, the more web traffic you're going to drive. You likely hit on more keywords. Google sees you as more active, and it's sort of this snowballing effect. But the reality is that most, especially tech and specialized companies, what are their resources for developing this kind of content? Even if budget is not a limiter, which it usually is, there becomes just the workflow of like who has to look at it and review it. So definitely, okay, so if you have a blog, I think once a month is the minimum you would want to blog. I will say that once you get below once a month, it's gonna lose some of its impact. If you can do twice a month, that's probably better. I think beyond that, it's, I would say anything beyond once a week, it's a lot of effort for the returns get to be smaller and smaller, but you do want to be doing it consistently. And you want to be repurposing your content. So, hey, I'm going to write the blog and then I'm going to send a newsletter. Don't assume that people saw both of them, so that you're not writing like a newsletter article and a blog article. That's probably no reason to do both. If you end up with 2 articles, do both on your blog and both on your e-newsletter. Okay, we have at least one other question here. Hold on, I'm just reading it. Okay, so the question is, accuracy of information is really important to our company. What suggestions do you have to maintain that? Yeah, okay, so that's critical to so many specialized markets, right? Like you may even be afraid of hiring, say, a marketing firm or design firm because you're like, you don't understand what we do. And you would certainly want to have a cycle of review to make sure nothing goes out that's inaccurate. Specifically, if you're using somebody who is not the tech person to write, whether it's an internal marketing person in our external marketing firm or design firm, upfront, they're going to need a lot of hand-holding, and so they start to understand your product and service. But if they're any good, that amount of hand-holding gets lowered and lowered and lowered. But what you want to avoid is like, okay, everything has to be reviewed by Joe, the engineer, and Joe is so busy he never reviews it, and so nothing goes out. I mean, somebody at a top level has to say, this is a priority, and you need to make that review process as easy as possible. So, for example, if the person only wants to review a Word document, put it in Word for them. If they only want to talk on the phone and then do a phone call and a screen share. If that person is critical to the process, you're going to have to figure out what makes that process go easily. Hopefully that helps you. And what else was I going to say? Forget. If you have a schedule, and this kind of goes back to the frequency thing, if you have a schedule and you have this review process built in, hopefully you're not like, well, we need the e-newsletter go out and we need them to review it, 5 p.m. on Thursday so we can send it out at 8 a.m. on Friday. That you got to give people time to do it. It's like, if he needs a week, some person needs a week to review things just because they're so busy, then give them a week. Make it workable for them. And also, having all those different people is just great for generating content ideas. Not only can they think of ideas, but the more your internal marketing person or your external marketing firm gets into this process, what you'll find is they start generating ideas like, hey, I read this article in Inc. Can we pull this in, this very broad appeal article? Can we bring our angle to this? And that's what you want. You want to have people. So everybody's thinking about this content marketing piece because, again, like for example, your salespeople probably know what are the questions people get. What collateral can I give them? That will help them understand things. So that, I believe, is all of the questions that I have right now. And I thank you very much for your time. I will, as I said, I will send out the slides and recording tomorrow. Look for that in your inbox. And if you would like to, I will also post it on my blog. I encourage you to read our blog and sign up for our own e-newsletters list if you would like examples of content marketing that we're doing, if you want articles on best practices and how you can use design effectively to build your business. So thank you again for your time, and I will be sending you the recording tomorrow.